Well, it's one of the things that I've observed, and I'm sure you have too, is in the world of commercial skills training that we work in, you'll often have a group of people in front of you, and you can clearly tell that one or two people in the room clearly are uncomfortable, and maybe don't even want to be there. And I'm just always wondering how often that reflects back on perhaps some of their previous learning experiences, perhaps from school or college, which therefore they might have negative connotations about. And therefore, I'm just wondering, so what do we need to do in the adult learning world that's different to perhaps how people have experienced learning in their previous earlier lives?
Yeah, it's a really good observation, Gareth. And let's be really clear, a lot of the people in the room will be excited to be there and they will have had amazing experiences at school and so on. But you're absolutely right. Having put three kids through university and asked them a little bit about their experience in the learning space, it's not overly positive. Theirs wasn't overly positive. And I think, people often come into a training course with a little bit of that in the background, but also their experience of training, which isn't necessarily a positive experience for them, or might not have been in the past. And, you hear in the corridors people say, yeah, I'm going on a training course, as if it's a bad thing rather than something that brings, delight and opportunity to them. And it's a real mixed bag. And, in a group of 12 people or whatever, you will inevitably have one or two people who will have those negative experiences of it. And I think the overall thing is that we need to remember, if we're responsible for that learning, is that we need to remember that learning as an adult is different, very different from learning as a child.
So it's interesting. So there's a difference in learning styles and techniques between being an adult and a child. So how would you summarize, some of those key differences that need to be there to make it work in the adult world?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, let's just keep it simple. There's four things to focus on. Number one, adults are more likely to learn if they're motivated to do so. So they need to see a purpose, the second point. So if they're motivated, they're much more likely to learn. One of the key parts of motivation is them understanding why they are learning. So for them to understand what the benefit is to them, but also the higher purpose of why they're learning and where it fits into their progression, let's say, or into their organization's strategy, shall we say. But they will also learn better if they are engaged on that journey. And what I mean by that is that adults will not learn if they're told or lectured to. Adults will learn if they are part of that learning process, so that their views, their opinions, and their experience is mined, if you will, and they are able to bring that into the learning space, whether that's a virtual learning space or a physical learning space. And the final thing that will encourage adults to learn is if it is fully integrated into what they do. And what I mean by that is that the purpose is clear, they're motivated, they're engaged, but actually it's very, very clear how it fits into their job. So it's something that they can use immediately, day to day, and it's actually going to make them better at what they do. Those four things alone will transform the potential for people, for adults, to learn. And it's our job to make that so. And if we don't, we're missing a massive opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So they've got to have a why to be motivated. They've got to be engaged, and also it's got to be relevant and practical for what they do on a day-to-day basis, I guess. Which is interesting, isn't it? Because that compare and contrast that with some of the things you hear. Again, I've got young kids going through school as well. Sometimes they come back, well, why am I doing this? What's the point? So it's interesting how those things perhaps are also relevant in the in their earlier years as well, but are often missing. So crucial in the adult world.
Absolutely.